Earlier in the show, you heard Wayne Newton talking about growing up basically here in Las Vegas. He came here, though, with his brother when he was just 15. Earlier in the show, that you heard him say it, he doesn't believe in retirement, but he did just celebrate his 80th birthday.
Wayne Newton has long been a household name in American entertainment, celebrated for his dazzling performances and boundless energy on the Las Vegas Strip. Known by the nickname Mr. Las Vegas, he built a career that spanned decades. But despite his star-studded reputation, there's an unsettling twist to this story that many fans never saw coming. Today, at age 80, Wayne Newton struggles with severe financial troubles that have put him in a much more precarious position than anyone would imagine for a legendary entertainer. First signs of financial trouble. From the outside looking in, Wayne Newton in the 1970s appeared to have it all. He was headlining sold-out shows along the Strip, capitalizing on the decline of other Las Vegas legends like Elvis and the Rat Pack. Casinos billed him as the next big thing, and in many ways, he delivered. His presence lit up marquees as he performed ultra-long sets, sometimes 3 hours at a stretch, and fans ate it up. Back then, it was almost unthinkable that money would ever become an issue for someone seemingly at the pinnacle of success. Yet behind the curtain, early cracks were starting to show. Wayne lacked a keen interest in the financial details of his career, preferring to focus on what he loved most: entertaining. This opened the door for questionable advice, bad deals, and outright mistakes that would haunt him later. Perhaps the most glaring sign of trouble arrived in the early 1980s, when he decided he didn't want to work under other people's terms anymore. He had spent years under the orbit of powerful moguls like Howard Hughes, and though he was never mistreated, Wayne yearned to be his own boss. Emboldened by his track record on stage, he took a bold leap into hotel ownership by trying to take control of the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. This was a high-profile venture that demanded business-savvy, reliable partners, and strong funding. Wayne, unfortunately, found himself leaning on questionable connections and haphazard financial decision-making. The Vegas rumor mill perked up when talk of mafia involvements began to swirl around him. Accusations of organized crime ties would dog Wayne, and soon they leaked from whispers to mainstream media coverage. Feeling under siege and perhaps underestimating the heft of these allegations, Wayne filed a defamation lawsuit against NBC News, which had reported on evidence linking him to mob-related figures. At first, it seemed like he'd vindicated himself. He won the case and was initially awarded a multi-million-dollar payout, an amount that could have done wonders for stabilizing his financial picture, but the relief was short-lived. On appeal, the courts reversed his victory and stripped away that financial windfall, leaving Wayne both humiliated and deeper in the weeds financially. Without the big check, it became painfully clear that his legal battle might have done more harm than good, exposing him to steep legal fees and intensifying suspicion about his connections. From that point on, his money woes spiraled. Debts began to build, courtesy of the Aladdin fiasco and other poorly handled ventures. By 1992, he was forced to declare bankruptcy, confronting the staggering reality of owing $20 million. The Internal Revenue Service entered the fray, claiming that Wayne owed hundreds of thousands in unpaid taxes. All this unfolded just as the star power he'd relied on in the prior decade began to dim. He was no longer the new, fresh face in town, and younger talents were lining up for their own chances at Vegas glory. The harsh truth was that Wayne Newton's finances had never been on truly solid ground, and now they were slipping beneath him with alarming speed. The Aladdin Hotel saga and mafia allegations. Wayne Newton's dream of owning the Aladdin Hotel was driven by a desire to escape the limitations of working under restrictive contracts. After years of performing meticulously planned sets and meeting the expectations of venue owners, he craved a bigger piece of the Vegas pie. For a while, it must have seemed like a brilliant plan. If he could control a major property on the Strip, he'd have both creative and financial independence. But the road to owning a Vegas hotel is famously choked with hidden hazards, especially when it comes to financing and choosing the right partners. In Wayne's case, less than legitimate investors started to circle. Rumors surfaced of mafia-linked individuals who saw him as the perfect cover, a famous, well-liked performer with a clean-cut image. That association would prove toxic. As news outlets picked up on stories about his backers, it became a PR nightmare. The rumors grew louder, eventually crystallizing into public statements suggesting Wayne was in over his head with organized crime. Even those who admired his crooning in the showrooms found themselves questioning the true source of his ambition. Hoping to regain control of the narrative, Wayne launched his defamation suit against NBC News for suggesting his venture had serious criminal entanglements. Initially, the victory seemed to swing in his favor. He walked away with a massive financial judgment that briefly sparked hope he might emerge from the fiasco with his reputation and finances intact. That optimism was short-lived. On appeal, the suit was overturned, along with the multi-million-dollar award. The swirl of litigation and negative publicity cast a deep shadow, at times overshadowing his actual talents. Meanwhile, the Aladdin dream crumbled. Wayne had poured resources, time, and credibility into the deal, only to see the hotel wrested away. When that happened, every financial miscue under the sun came rushing into daylight. Debts, late payments, lawsuits, and shady alliances. Instead of a triumphant leap to becoming a mogul of his own, Wayne found himself stuck with ballooning obligations that would follow him for years. These mafia allegations damaged more than just Wayne's wallet. They chipped away at his public image, raising doubts about the sincerity and geniality that had been such a big part of his appeal. It didn't matter how many times he belted out a song to sold-out crowds. The ghost of the Aladdin fiasco hummed right along in the background, reminding audiences that even the most beloved entertainers can get caught in Las Vegas's shadier corners. The entire saga would mark a pivotal turning point in his life. After decades of bright lights and standing ovations, Wayne faced both skepticism from fans and wariness from potential business partners. What was once a gilded path to success turned eerily dark. The same spirit that propelled him to risk-taking, first in show business, then in real estate, brought about extreme turbulence he never fully escaped. In the end, owning the Aladdin wasn't just the dream that got away. It was the turning point that launched Wayne Newton's lasting battle with financial instability, casting a stark light on how high-stakes ambition can spiral out of control on the Las Vegas Strip. Bankruptcy and mounting tax debts. By the early 1990s, Wayne Newton found himself stuck in a tangled web of unpaid bills, dramatic court confrontations, and a sinking reputation in the financial world. It all culminated in 1992, when he declared bankruptcy and revealed that he owed nearly $20 million to a host of creditors, including the IRS. This figure was staggering, especially for a performer who once packed sold-out showrooms night after night in Las Vegas. Much of that debt had quietly stacked up over the previous decade, fueled by a swirl of bad investments and steep legal costs from his lawsuits. In particular, the drawn-out drama surrounding the Aladdin Hotel ownership scheme and the associated legal battles cost him big. By the time Wayne realized how much trouble he was in, it was too late. The 1992 bankruptcy filing was a public admission that his money troubles had gone far beyond what any quick fix or well-timed concert could solve. The authority that most visibly loomed over him was the IRS. Reports circulated that Wayne had neglected to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes, an amount that would balloon further as interest and penalties kept adding up. The government's involvement created more headlines, sharpening the scrutiny on Wayne's financial decisions. For an entertainer used to living the high life, big properties, a lavish lifestyle, and a slate of exotic animals, the IRS's pressure was an unpleasant dose of reality. Fans who adored Mr. Las Vegas suddenly saw a different, more vulnerable side of him. The same man who stood on stage in immaculate suits, belting out hit tunes, was now seen pleading with courts to get his finances in order. He had no choice but to sell off some possessions and scramble to protect what he could of his image. But the bankruptcy itself didn't solve every problem. Wayne continued to butt heads with the IRS through the late 1990s and well into the 2000s. Each dispute seemed to start the same way. The government alleged that he hadn't paid what he owed in taxes. Wayne insisted that he was making good faith efforts to settle his accounts. In some instances, news emerged detailing real estate liens and threats of asset seizures. Every time it looked like Wayne might manage a clean break, new claims surfaced that dragged him back into court. The debt rode on his shoulders like a permanent house guest that refused to leave. Another complicating factor was Wayne's refusal, or perhaps inability, to scale down. Even as lawsuits mounted, he tried to keep huge properties and multiple business ventures going simultaneously. While some celebrities in similar positions might have downsized, Wayne seemed reluctant to give up on the dream of a grand empire. an empire he'd hoped to build since the days he first entertained visions of controlling a Las Vegas hotel. His desire to remain a major figure, combined with his lack of effective financial management, meant that he kept stepping into legal sinkholes. And when lenders and partners realized he wasn't as financially stable as they once believed, that trust eroded, driving him deeper into debt. Failed projects and partnerships. Wayne's knack for dazzling crowds on stage did not necessarily extend to the business ventures he pursued off stage. One of his more notorious misadventures took place in the late 1990s, when he teamed up with fellow Vegas showman Tony Orlando. Emboldened by their local fame, they decided to run a massive entertainment venue called Talk of the TOWN. It was an ambitious project, 2,100 seats, high-dollar production values, and grand expectations for nightly crowds. But once the curtain rose, the reality was far from glamorous. Audiences were regularly below 1,000 on big nights, and that kind of attendance simply couldn't cover the staggering monthly upkeep, including a lease rumored to be around $2 million. Wayne and Tony thought their combined star power would be enough to draw huge crowds, but they forgot to factor in the shifting tastes of the Vegas market, where entertainment options were rapidly multiplying. The partnership quickly grew sour under the weight of financial pressures. What made things even more dramatic was a bizarre falling out involving hidden recording devices. The story went that Tony's son discovered some kind of wire or bug, which implied Wayne, or someone close to him, had been eavesdropping. The whole episode caused more than a little tension, and Tony ended up leaving in a cloud of bitter feelings. The scandal illustrated just how complicated Wayne's relationships could become once the stress of poor ticket sales, big investments, and bruised egos took hold. Instead of forging a winning team, the two Las Vegas headliners ended up parting ways with no substantial profits to show for their efforts. Wayne was undeterred. After Tony walked away, Wayne tried renaming the place the Wayne Newton Theater, hoping that a little rebranding magic would turn things around. Unfortunately, the crowds never picked up in the way he hoped. By this time, he was juggling multiple lawsuits and sinking even deeper into a financial bog. The leftover debts and unresolved disputes from the partnership weighed heavily on him, and the fiasco became yet another dark chapter in his long roster of money-losing ventures. But that wasn't the only misstep. Another episode came when Wayne attempted to turn his lavish estate into a tourist attraction reminiscent of Elvis Presley's Graceland. Plotted out with significant backing from a company called CSD, the project was supposed to be a surefire hit. They planned not only to renovate the main house into a museum filled with Wayne's memorabilia, but also to add a dinner theater, a car wash, and various other attractions to keep visitors entertained. At first blush, this idea seemed like it could be a golden ticket. After all, Wayne was one of Vegas's most enduring stars, and fans might have been keen on visiting his personal domain. Yet logistical headaches and financial uncertainty soon marred the project. Wayne resisted vacating the property entirely, something apparently expected in the agreement, and the museum never turned a consistent profit. While tours did operate for a time, they stopped in 2018, leaving an atmosphere of mystery about whether it was a simple business decision or something more ominous related to Wayne's ongoing monetary troubles. Over the years, these chronic failures left Wayne branded as a talented performer, but a shaky partner. Word spread that deals with him could become messy fast. That reputation, paired with his mounting IRS issues, made it harder and harder to secure the kind of capital he needed to keep his various enterprises running. Even so, in typical Wayne fashion, he refused to give up. He'd often publicly declare his intention to bounce back, to open a new show, or to resurrect a struggling venue. The gambler's spirit in him, so deeply tied to the city he'd long called home, just wouldn't quit, even if the odds seemed stacked against him every time he tried. Animal welfare controversies. One curious twist in Wayne's life story involves his fondness for exotic animals, and the controversies that followed when resources ran short. Over the years, he amassed quite a menagerie on his property, including horses, exotic birds, and even creatures like sloths or monkeys. Given his high-profile image, these animals became part of the Wayne Newton mystique, a reflection of his generous heart, or at least his desire to create a whimsical environment. But as his financial troubles deepened, caring for these animals properly became a serious burden. A lawsuit was filed when Wayne allegedly couldn't pay for basic supplies like hay, which might sound trivial until you consider how much horses can eat. Rumors circulated about living conditions for some of the more exotic pets. Critics questioned how someone with long-standing money problems could maintain a suitable habitat for creatures that require specialized diets, veterinary care, and enclosures. Wayne's defenders argued that he truly loved these animals and was doing his utmost, but the sheer cost of feeding and housing them, especially amid debts that soared into the millions, was undeniably a problem. Things got especially tense when local authorities or animal rights groups discussed possible interventions. Maintaining an exotic menagerie is both costly and complicated. If you can't pay for veterinary specialists, climate-controlled facilities, and around-the-clock staff, animals can suffer. Wayne's repeated financial stumbles raised eyebrows about whether he was in any position to keep such a collection. While some fans admired his compassion for taking in these creatures, others viewed it as yet another example of his poor judgment, an emotional gesture that only compounded his monetary woes, health setbacks, and ongoing performances. Despite his overall resilience, Wayne Newton's physical health began to show the wear and tear of decades spent on stage. One especially tough moment came when he suffered a painful back injury. The strain of countless live shows, often involving long sets and energetic movement, finally caught up with him, forcing him to take breaks he originally never planned to take. For someone who built his identity around continuity and reliability in show business, slowing down was a bitter pill to swallow. At times, fans who bought tickets to see him in Las Vegas found their shows rescheduled or canceled altogether because Wayne needed to recuperate. Yet, each time he recovered enough to stand up straight and belt out a tune, he came roaring back onto the stage. He even managed to film commercials for Caesar's Palace, showcasing a polished, iconic figure who had supposedly weathered the storm. Those clips often aired nationally, reinforcing his image as Mr. Las Vegas behind the scenes, though. He was juggling rehab programs, doctor visits, and a host of other medical routines to stay performance-ready. It was a real-life example of how show business can sometimes be both glamorous and grueling. Wayne also found creative ways to leverage his persona in a changing marketplace. He occasionally did cameo appearances on talk shows or special event broadcasts, making sure people knew he was still around. His publicity team, along with casino executives, capitalized on nostalgia for the glitzy Vegas era by keeping him front and center, even when his presence had to be scaled back for health reasons. Meanwhile, tabloids and local gossip columns sometimes portrayed him as being in dire straits, both physically and financially. But Wayne wasn't about to surrender. He'd already survived lawsuits, bankruptcies, and rumors about mafia ties. A bad back was just another hurdle. The repeated comebacks might not have healed all his aches or resolved every debt, but they kept him in the public eye long enough to book fresh gigs, sign new deals, and retain a measure of star power. Each performance felt like a testament to his unbreakable bond with the city that earned him his nickname. And for the core group of fans who continued to buy tickets, it was inspirational to see this enduring showman keep going. Proof that even a host of obstacles couldn't dim the lights on Wayne Newton's enduring stage presence. The museum project's rise and fall. One of Wayne Newton's more ambitious plans to shore up his finances came when he decided to transform his lavish estate into a museum. The big idea was to convert his property, which was already famous for its grandeur and menagerie of animals, into a tourist destination that would draw fans who wanted a closer look at the everyday life of Mr. Las Vegas. Securing a deal with a company called CSD, he seemed poised for success. They poured significant money into renovating the home, and for a time, it looked like visitors were in for a treat. Tours of Wayne's mansion started operating, promising a behind-the-scenes peek at his career mementos and personal artifacts. People could walk the same grounds where Wayne once greeted celebrities, cared for exotic pets, and possibly dreamed up his next big show. At first, it was an exciting opportunity to reflect Wayne's iconic image back at the public. The idea was that the museum would not only pay off some of his outstanding debts, but also give him a steady income stream far into retirement. Unfortunately, as with many of Wayne's business ventures, hope and reality clashed at top speed. Project budgets soared, rumors swirled about disputes over contract terms, and the arrangement requiring Wayne to eventually move off the property became a source of tension. He was always attached to his home and the animals, and the situation caused friction between him and CSD's vision for a visitor-friendly attraction. Though the museum project attracted curious fans early on, it never quite caught fire in the way investors had bet on. Perhaps it was too expensive, or maybe changing travel trends worked against it. Regardless, by 2018, the tours ended abruptly, and the public was left guessing at exactly why. Official statements remained vague, hinting at business decisions and undisclosed complications. Wayne, for his part, didn't release many details, leaving fans to wonder if it was just another cautionary tale of overextension. The shutdown was yet another blow for a performer who'd spent so much of his life trying to stabilize his fortune. It joined the long list of Wayne Newton ventures that started with high hopes but ended in disappointment. And although it wasn't the final chapter in his story, the museum's closure symbolized the delicate line he always seemed to walk between showmanship and financial hardship. As with so many of his endeavors, it was a grand vision that never fully took flight. Despite it all, he still makes headlines, whether through a cameo appearance at a major sports draft or a surprise spot on TV. And so the cycle continues. Once he's back on that stage, crooning to an enchanted audience, debts and scandals fade into the wings. In a city built on the philosophy of reinvention, Wayne Newton stands as a prime example of how one performer can keep going against the odds. His financial woes might be an unavoidable footnote, but his spirit and determination remain the defining notes of his life story. And for a man who thrives in the spotlight, that's undoubtedly the legacy he'll carry forward, still on his feet, still ready for one more show.